Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, Mohammad Mahdi. How are you?
Assalamu alaikum. Fine, and you?
I'm good, thank you. Mohammad Mahdi is our guest today. He's an expert on Iran Palestinian relationships, and he is from Iran, Tehran, right, Mohammad Mahdi?
Yes, of course. I'm from Tehran, born, grown, and graduated in Tehran.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Let us know a little about you.
Sure. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I am Mohammad Mahdi, 32 years old. As I said, I'm born, grown, and of course graduated from Tehran University. I studied Master of World Studies, and I followed issues in West Asia and North Africa, especially focusing on Palestine. This is one of my let's say one of my stress points, and of course the second one is the Iranian history. In the recent one, of course, after the Second World War and contemporary politics in West Asia and North Africa, with let's say a view to the Palestine. Beside Iranian history is the way that I try to follow in my researches and activities. Of course, the name that we chose, which is Iran-Israel relations, is somehow related to this. I try to talk more about Palestine and Iranian-Palestinian relationship, and I think that it would help to know more about Iran's role in the region and Iran's presence, especially about the contemporary politics and history.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful, and I'm glad to have you here today.
Thank you.
Would you like to brief us a little about the historical prospect of Iran and Palestinian relationships?
Yeah. You know, in this region, we have several, let's say, identities. Before I come to the issue, I mean this Iranian-Palestinian, we have three main identities in the West Asian and North Africa region. One is Iranian or Persian. I'm not going through this. The other is Turkish, and the other is Arabic identity. So we have, I mean, from Iran to the West, Iran, Iraq, Syria, Turkey today, of course, Ottoman Empire before, and other Arab countries that we have, for example, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and North African Arab countries that we have. So there are always relationship between these three identities. Of course, we have some religious identities beside, but I want to express in this type of let's say framework. In this framework, we can find a better view on what we name today as Iranian-Palestinian relationship. So before occupation, I mean 1948, and before that, before the Britain mandate in Ottoman era, we have Palestine as a part of Ottoman Empire. So Palestine is playing a role for Iranians in three main fields. The first and the most important was a religious one. Palestine was one of the stations that Iranians were using to go to Hajj and Hijaz for Mecca. The pilgrims were going through the route which Palestine was a part of it. And we have lots of Iranians that are buried there because this journey was hard and with very many let's say health problems for pilgrims. So we see that they stay in Palestine for months sometimes to get ready to attend the Hajj and go to Mecca and Medina. So this was a part of Iranian religious journey, which is, as we call wajib, which is a mandatory thing for every Muslim to visit and pray in Mecca once in his life or her life. So we had Palestine as a part of this mandatory journey for every Muslim people who was for who it was affordable to attend this event. The other field is let's say economic relationship between Iran and Palestinians. I think that it's about just after the occupation in 1950, we have a report in Iranian parliament which is saying that there are near 20,000 Iranians living in Palestine. The report is prepared for Dr. Mohammad, who was a national leader and who was a national movement leader and the one who was behind the nationalization of Iranian oil industry. And he was, let's say, a political leader. There was a withdrawal of the relationships between Iran and the new established Zionism entity there. And because of this, there was a report in Iranian parliament which was showing that at that time we had near 20,000 Iranians who holding Iranian identity. Of course, there might be many other people that were with Iranian roots, but with another type of identity and nationality. But those who were just Iranian were about 20,000 people at that time. And the other is the cultural field. We had many cultural connections between Iranians and Palestinians. As an example, we had an Arabic language poet who is named Mohammad Ibrahim al-Irani. He was a well-known poet in Palestine. Of course, recent. It's not about. We are not talking about for hundreds of years before. We are just talking about less than 100 years. And he was one of Palestinian poets who was named as al-Irani, means the Iranian. Mohammad Ibrahim, the Iranian. And we have also in Iran some other connections in cultural field, which is talking about the Holy Land, the Masjid al-Aqsa, and of course the Palestine as we named today. And these three fields are the old fields of connection between Iranian society and Iran as a nation, and Palestinians and Palestine. We have some other issues as we come closer, but I mean the political issues. But about the non-political issues, we had these three main uh, fields that we have connections between Iranian society and Palestine.
So, like the route to Makkah is the one connection.
Yeah.
Second,
Yeah.
the near 20,000 Iranians are living in Palestine at that time. This is second connection. The third connection is the cultural ties.
For trade. Yeah.
Yeah, the cultural ties. And you mentioned you have given an example of a poet who is Iranian. So on a lighter note, I will quote two examples. That one, the Turkish people are very disturbed with Iranians because they say that Iranians do claim that Rumi was also Iranian.
Yeah.
And second, we often crack jokes with friends, especially with Ali Raza. I used to joke about it, that if you ask an Iranian, he will say that Prophet was holding the Iranian passport.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
I can understand that a proud nation, which is very proud on their history, geography, and their culture, they always try to connect other civilizations through their culture. I can understand.
Yeah.
But in the recent time, after let's say after 40s, when the Israel was there was not Israel, but the community, Jewish community, was establishing colonies there and buying the land. And what was Iran's role at that time in 40s before the establishment of Israel as an state?
That time we had many problems in all around the world. Of course, we had many problems. Of course, we have the First World War. We have the problems like, for example, Sykes-Picot, and those who came to our region and tried to draw the boundaries. And after that, we have the British mandate in the region, especially in Palestine. And we have several problems in Iran. We have Iran is in conflict with the northern neighbor, which was Russia at that time, and then Soviet Union, and as well, Iran had a problem with the Britain in the south, in the let's say Persian Gulf coastline, and Iran was too busy in its own political and sovereignty-related issues. As of course, it's not just Iran. All the region was struggling in this and stuck in this new situation, which was maybe a consequence of modernization of the West and its consequences in the East. So, an eastern part of the world. So, the point is that we have some activities of Iranians, but about the Iranian government, we do not see any important thing that we can compare to today. After the Second World War and after the establishment of United Nations, we see that Iran is part of a task force which are working on a solution for Arab Jews, of course, as named in UN documents, problem and crisis in Palestine. So, of course, Iran was against the partition resolution as a member of task force, but it was concluded that in resolution number 181 in 1947, it was concluded that there should be a partition under supervision of UN. This is the first Iranian position against this new emerged problem, which was the occupation in our narrative and establishment in the other side narrative. Iranian, we have, of course, some Iranian individuals that are, of course, important, but they are not talking on behalf of Iranian government, as I am today. Now, I'm not talking about on behalf of Iranian of your point of view. I'm just saying my personal point of view. We have Sayyid Zia Tabatabai. Sayyid Zia Tabatabai is the one who conducted a coup d'etat against the. Of course, it's about the let's say about 100 years ago. Yes, exactly 100 years ago, we have a coup d'etat which is done with two people, two of political leaders. One is Reza Pahlavi, father of Mohammad Reza Pahlavi and the founder of Pahlavi dynasty. And the other is Sayyid Zia Tabatabai, who became prime minister. Sayyid Zia Tabatabai, after withdrawal and after he resigned from his position, he went to Palestine and became a friend of Haj Amin al-Husseini, who is leader of Iran, leader of Palestinian, as a mufti of Quds, a religious leader of holy sites of Palestine. So we have this individual as an important individual who is working there as an Iranian and who has a role in Palestinian, let's say, governing council and the group of people who are going to fight against this Jewish and newly came immigrants to Palestine. So we have these separated and variety of players, but not connected and let's say all in a one and same position.
So, Mahdi, I want to understand that when the Israel was, they were establishing the state of Israel, Iran was stuck with its own problems. It's absolutely understandable. Then once Iran in 60s, 70s, Iran was the power in the region. Iran was not a small country or a banana state kind of country. It was a mighty power in the region. And then we see no interest from Iran into Palestinian issue, or what was the reason then?
Yeah, you know, we have to go deep in history. First, as we have occupation, in 1948, and we have the clashes. I mean, Arab army came to Palestine, and we have clashes between Jews and, of course, I mean, not Arab Jews, the Zionist Jews, and Arabs there. We have no intervention from Iran. Of course, at that time, Iran was stuck in its own problems, and it's a hard time in Iranian recent history. But first, we see that Iran declares Israel in a de jure way. It says we declare Israel as it is. We do not go to ratify and say that Israel is a state which we declare it as a state completely. But we say that it's a fact. Excuse me, I said de jure. It's not true. Excuse me. It's de facto, not de jure. Iran become one of the countries who is saying that we have relationships with Israel in a de facto way. Let's say in a short time, less than 2 or 3 years time, we see that Iran is going to withdraw from this position. Why? Because we have several global crises like Korea War, Iranian national movement, which was led by Dr. Mossadegh at that time, and it was let's say working on eliminating the king's power, Mohammad Shah, and limiting he and his family's power. They are starting to say that we have lots of evidences on it in their publications and transactions. They are going to say that, okay, if we have legitimate war between freedom fighters in Korea and those from imperialism, so why do we not find this in Palestine and between Palestinians and Israelis? So it became the political position of Dr. Mossadegh government when he became prime minister, and the national movement became the members of cabinet. They start to withdraw from whatever Iran had made in relation with Israel, and this is green lights to our countries, especially to, and you see that we have nationalization of Suez Canal, as we have nationalization of Iranian oil industry. So these two motivations are eliminating the political.
With excuse, Mahdi, I cannot hear you clearly. Do you have any hands-free your mic? Is it available with you? If it is available.
Yes, I have one.
Let's try that.
Yeah. So do you hear me better or not?
Yeah, a little better. That's a little better.
Oh, okay. So we have this movement against Zionism and occupation in Iranian, mostly young people. But we have a coup d'etat in Iran. The CIA coup d'etat against against Dr. Mossadegh and his cabinet, and this coup d'etat is going to change everything, including the position against Israel. So we see that Iranian cabinet and prime ministers who are coming one after the other after Dr. Mossadegh has nothing to do with Palestine. And they also are welcoming to everything is coming from the American side. And after that, we have in 1916, we have a strategical bond and connection between Israel and the USA. So this reflects in Iranian political position as well. It's we have about 10 or 15 years that we see that Iranian government is going close and closer to the government and the Israeli regime. But we have some problems between them after some sort of happenings, some sort of incidents that happened. We see that Iranian Shah is going to reconsider that if we have to be so close with Israelis or not. One of them is the putting Masjid al-Aqsa in fire by a Zionist hardliner who did this, and of course the Al-Ibrahimi Masjid, of course, as well. We see that we see these incidents happen through the time. In 1969, we see that we have this problem in Masjid al-Aqsa, that they put masjid in fire. So masjid is holy for Muslims, and we see that the first thing that Iranian Shah is going to find as a point of, let's say, change, a pivot in their pivot point in their political attitude toward Israeli regime is this incident, and this, of course, I believe it's a crime. After that, we have several other issues, which is really connected and mixed with, let's say, American political issues. We have a mixture of American conflict between Democrats and Republicans, which is reflecting in Iran. The Iranian Shah is pro-Republican, and the Israeli regime at that time there is more pro-Democrats. So we have several issues like this that we see is reflected in Iranian history. We have today one of Pahlavi-era, one of Shah men who is alive now, which is named Ardeshir Zahedi. Ardeshir Zahedi is the son of Fazlullah Zahedi, the prime minister who did the coup d'état against Dr. Mossadegh. Ardeshir Zahedi believes that Israelis, at the end of rule of Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, were against Mohammad Reza Pahlavi. Of course, he has lots of evidences for this. One of them is that Iran was going to be a nuclear power, and Western countries were cooperating with Iran in becoming a nuclear power then. So Israelis were considering Iran as a potential threat against their existence and their Jewish, Zionist Jewish, let's say, identity. So he believes that it's one of the reasons that Israel was against, and of course, we see in the let's say memorials of the late Pahlavi era that he became, and there are always some anti-Israeli sayings related to the Iranian Shah in his late, of course, days of rule. Yeah, we have this as Iranian governmental and political of governments. Of course, we have other activists and many rebels and freedom fighters and those alternative and anti-Shah activists, like those who were named as Islamists, those who were, of course, some of leftists, of course, and some of the rebels who were acting, fighting against Pahlavi governments. They have their own point of view against Israel and in pro-Palestinian perspective. But I just mentioned those the way that we see Iranian government and Palestine issue after the Dr. Mossadegh up to Iranian Islamic Revolution.
Oh, Mahdi, as you mentioned that in the last era of Shah of Iran, Israel was against Shah of Iran. So directly or indirectly, whatever Israelis have done to topple the government of Shah of Iran, that helped the present regime to take over Iran. It was one of the components.
Of course, it was indirectly, and it was not. Yes, it was not. Of course, because the alternative parties, of course, those who were maybe we can name there as political rivals of Shah, and those who were fighting against Shah and were killing and getting killed in their clashes with Shah government and let's say family. Those people were more against Israel and more pro-Palestinians than Shah. We see that the whole political atmosphere of Iran were coming against Israel and pro-Palestine. Both sides.
A viewpoint emerges that there were three powers at that time in Iran: Shah, leftists, and Islamists. So because leftists were inclined towards Russia, so the obvious, and Shah was ruling, and if Israel was against Shah, let's build the case like this, then leftists were not the option for Israel. Only Islamists were
Yeah.
option left with Israel to replace Shah. Okay, what is the situation of Jewish community in Iran, historical and the present?
Uh, about what you mentioned first about these
Yeah.
three players of Iranian politics, I have to mention that we have the strongest Israeli as a regime. I mean, anti-Israeli uh, attitudes in Islamists. We have some leftists that are pro-Israelis, but we have some leftists also that are against Israel. But almost all of Islamist anti-Shah fighters were against Israel and Zionism at that time. Uh, there is a powerful narrative which says that Shah is a puppet of Israel. So, because of that, we see that Islamists are uh, um, they are seeing they are looking at Shah and its relationship with Israel, and after this coup d'état, that they are considering Shah as a player who is going to, let's say, uh, make the uh, power of Israel greater than before. They are against this Zionists, and I want to express that we have the most anti-Zionism attitudes in Islamists, as we have several. For example, in Islamic calendar, we have, of course, in Shia calendar, we have Ashura, which is
Yep.
the day of Hussein, which is day that we have the martyrdom of Imam Hussein. We see a well-known cleric, which is named Murtaza Mutahari, who were assassinated after the revolution. Murtaza Mutahari, in the day of Ashura, says that, why are you looking for uh, those who killed Hussein 1,400 years ago? Look for those who are oppressed today, and they are Palestinians. Look for those who, if Hussein was here, was fighting them. Those are Zionists. So when we see that they are using this narrative, anti-Zionism, in a traditional framework, which is always considered by Shia, and the majority of Iran is Shia, and we have lots of different political views, but we have less than this, more and more less than this. We have differences about Hussein ibn Ali,
Yeah.
and we see that Islamists are going to use every, let's say, potential against Zionism, because they are saying that, of course, Zionism is let's say, plan to overcome Islam, and it's against Islam and Muslims. I have to express this because it's a powerful narrative before Islamic Revolution, as well after that. It's not something generated just by political consequences of Islamic revolution. But in leftists, we have two different uh, points of view about Israel. Some are going to somehow be pro-Israelis. They have some maybe claims, maybe some words in some minor issues about Palestinians, but they totally support Israel. We have Muzaffar Baghai and some other activists who were near to leftists, and of course some well-known leftists, because we have no because of time. I'm not going to mention all of them, but we see that they are going to say that okay, Israel is not something that you name it as an evil, It's just a state. But some other leftists who are, let's say, challenging with such a union, Soviets, I mean, Russia, who are more near to Cuba, who are more near to Che Guevara. They count Israel as as an arm of imperialism, and as we see that they have some clashes between some Palestinian leftists, we see that they are connected with other leftists, and Iranians are connected as well. So we have almost all of anti-Shah militants and militias who are leftists or Islamists. They are almost all of them are anti-Israeli. But we have some scholars who are leftists and they are pro-Israelis at that time. About the Jews, as you mentioned, in Iran, before revolution, we had more Jews. Of course, before the 1948, we had much more. But after 1948, we have a first wave of migration to occupied lands. And after that, after the revolution, we have the second wave. Of course, after the revolution, Judaism was counted as one of the legitimate religions in Iran. Although Jews are not as much as they can have a parliament member as other Iranians, but they have a parliament member because of their different, of course, part of because they are a different part of religious, let's say, map of Iran. So this is the. Of course, we have lots of. As I conducted some researches before the 1948. Jews are mostly poor people in Iran. But after that, and after the coup d'etat against Dr. Mossadegh, Jews and Baha'is, these are two minor religious, let's say, branches in Iran. Jews and Baha'is are going to be more considered by government, as government was going to make the situation wider to those who are, let's say, suppressed somehow in Iran, of course, by Iranian society, I mean. So we have some Jews that are working in Iran, and they are so very rich people. And after, of course, the revolution, they migrated to other countries. Of course, some as I conducted the research, mostly moved to two countries. Of course, first the USA, and we have all of the Western countries are hosting Iranian Jews, and some are migrating to occupied lands in Palestine. And of course, this is It's not my. I have to mention this. It's not my expertise. I'm more focused on Palestine and Palestinians and Iranian Arabs connections, and maybe we can discuss more on it.
Yeah. Let me ask you a question about Palestinians. When we see, I have traveled a lot in Europe. I have been in USA many times. I have visited Iran as well, but for a short period of time. And I have seen a lots of Palestinian immigrants in USA, Germany, everywhere in Europe. They are there. How many Palestinian immigrated to Iran?
It's almost nothing. Of course, we had some, but now there are maybe less than 100 people. Of course, as I was asking, we have some students, and we have some are holding dual nationalities, which I do not count as Palestinians,
Yeah.
and those who are purely Palestinians and do not have dual nationalities, I think it's fewer than 100 people, or
Why
maybe
so?
less.
Why so?
Uh, you know, it's not just Palestinians. This is the point that I have mentioned first. We have conflicts between three major identities. Uh, I name Persian identity. Maybe some are going to challenge me and say Iranian identity. It's not our discussion now. Uh, okay, Iranian identity. Maybe we can say so. Uh, no difference now. Uh, the Turkish identity and Arab identity. Uh, we have, it's about more than 100 years that we have. Of course, it's maybe it can be for hundreds years of history, but it's so let's say divided in this. It's too divided in this 100 years that we have clashes, severe clashes between Iranian identity and Arab identity. So we do not host so much Arabs in Iran as Arabs, and there is an exception, which are about Shias. Of course, I see that we have lots of Shia Arabs, for example, from Iraq. They were under severe situation, under many problems, and many pressures imposed by Saddam Hussein in Ba'ath rule, during the Ba'ath rule in Iraq. So they moved to Iran. Some of them did move to Iran, but after we have the Americans ruined Iraq, and after in this new government, we see some of them are returning to Iraq. Iranian Arab connection is not now a powerful connection culturally and uh, maybe in society, and you see in both sides um, very hard people are talking very hard against each other. We see both in each side, in the Arab side and Iranian side. They count each other as totally, let's say, uh, um, those who are going to conquer each other. You know, we see. I see both in Arabs and Iranians that say that okay, Iranians say Arabs are going to conquer our country as they did once, and Arabs are saying that Iranians have a plan to conquer Arab countries, for example, Iraq, Syria, Lebanon and Palestine, so and newly Yemen. So this does not belong only to Palestine. It's a problem between Iranian identity. I believe it's a problem between Iranian identity and Arab identity, and it's not. Of course, we have some religious problems that are going to deepen this problem, but I believe it's not religious. It doesn't have a religious root. It has an identical root.
Like, I want to understand the situation and the mind frame of Palestinian as well, because you are an expert of Palestine and Palestinian. Like Israel, if we talk about Israel, and the only supporter or the biggest supporter of Israel is US
Yeah.
and Palestinian. And right now, if we talk about the Palestinian issue, Iran is one of the biggest advocate of Palestinian issue. They work for them, they support them, or there is an impression that Iran supports everyone who is talking or fighting for Palestine, even if it's Hezbollah or whatever it is. But
Yeah.
people who are oppressed by Israel immigrating to America, and people are reluctant to immigrate to Iran who is supporting their cause. So, what is the frame mind of Palestinians? Like, I just want to understand if someone is trying to like coup on my house, I will not go to seek shelter from his elder brother.
Yeah.
If I have a problem with Israel, I will not go to seek asylum or nationality or immigration from USA. I definitely
Yeah.
go towards my closer ally, which should be
Yeah.
Iran. So Palestinians are not coming to seek asylum in Iran, but they are flying to USA or Canada. Or so, what is their state of mind? I am failed to understand.
We have different layers. Uh, those who are supporting Zionism in the world and supporting Israeli regime against Palestinians in the USA, they have some definite layers of the country. I mean, the USA. So people who go in living in the USA, the life situation there is not connected to these political issues 100%. So they may find a way that they can live there and have no connections, have no conflict with these layers of the USA. But the problem that they face in Iran, or maybe in other countries, with Persian attitude, of course, the Iranian identity, as I named it, or Persian identity, uh, uh, they will face problems in society. They will face problems in their living with people. So if I going to let's how can I say it to uh, suppress someone because of its ethnicity in Iran, he or she will have a harder situation living with me than the one who is in the USA and have nothing to do with its Palestinian or Arab identity, but paying tax in favor of Israel to kill its family and people in Palestine. So this they will struggle day by day in a conflict between societies, but they will not experience such a problem when they go in a society like the USA or Western societies, which are somehow separated they made some separations between their political acts in the world and their social norms. So I think it's one of the issues. Of course, you see that the other point is referred to Palestinians. As every society, we have different Palestinians. We have some are pro-resistance, pro-Hamas, Jihad Islami, and other groups that are named as resistance axis. And we have some are against them. Also, they are Palestinians, but they are against them. And we have an spectrum between this side of resistance and between those who are against them. Some are between and in a middle ground, maybe we can say. Those people, those who are not a 100% pro-resistance Palestinian, when they are going to find a place that they became a resident of their country or a city in a country, they will not choose Iran. Of course, we have many people from Palestine who are living in Turkey, who are living in Qatar, and they are maybe with the let's say they are 100% pro Hamas or 100% pro resistance, as we can name this axis as the axis of resistance. So in Palestinian of course frame, I mean. So these countries like Turkey, like Qatar, or sometimes Kuwait, before in Saddam time, Iraq, and some of them in Lebanon, some in Syria, they are living there. Of course, we have to mention that these countries, the host countries, of course, should have a good situation for life. For example, in Syria, we have not a good situation for those who is going to move from Palestine to Syria, should find a better choice than what he was or she was before.
That's right. My last question, Mahdi. What is a peaceful solution to the problem of Palestine?
I rather to ask this from Palestinians. You know, we always talk about Palestinians, but we cannot think of involving them in their own way of solution making. So I am a researcher, I am an activist, I'm an observer. I think that's the way that is going through people purely is the only way that will make sense. It makes sense it will help and find a way in solving this problem.
That's right. That's right. I appreciate that you joined us. I'm thankful for your time.
You're welcome, and thank you.
Your inputs are valuable for us, and you gave us an opportunity to see the issue of Palestine through an Iranian eye, and that will
Thank
give
you.
a great understanding about the issue. Thank you, Mahdi. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And just a point that I think that we had a question or comment, but I missed it.
Yeah. Let me. Yeah. It is here from Abdul R. Rathod. How you see that where the great powers stand on the recent issue of Palestine?
The recent issue of Palestine, we have two issues. We have one is we see the annexation of West Bank by Israeli regime, and before this we had the deal of century, which was proposed by Trump, and of course I try to mix these two. These have some common points. Of course, they are not same, but they have some common points. I think that's what happened about Golan Heights in the Syrian part of which was occupied by Israeli regime. The annexation of Golan Heights showed that we saw that we do not experience powerful objection in the global, let's say, atmosphere against it. And when we do not experience this political, let's say, positions against this type of annexation and occupations, the only way that remains is the military options, military-related options. Let's simply say the war. When we are going to not use politics and diplomacy, the only option which remains is war. So I do not think that powers have much to do against the annexation and deal of century which is proposed by Trump, and I think that it will lead to the escalation of tensions between Palestinians and Israeli regime in West Bank and Gaza as well.
Thank you, Mahdi.
You're welcome.
Thank you for your time, and hope to see you soon.
Thank you. Inshallah.
Allah
Thank you.
Hafiz.
Goodbye.